Greetings, everyone. Trevor McShane. Time for another Tune In with Trevor episode. Our guest today is Richard Sparks. Richard is a comedy writer, librettist, author, raconteur. You've got a new series of books out, the New Rock series. Tell us about it.
Well, the first book is called New Rock, New Roll, R-O-L-E, because, well, if you think about third rock from the sun, a rock is a planet, and it came from my love of role-playing games. I just got the idea one day as I was galloping around getting up to mischief with a bunch of scoundrels, in lifetime, in my earphones. What would it really like to be this heroic young battle mage in a world like that? And there's only one way to find out, which was to write it. So it's not going into a game. That trope has been done. Then it's basically three people win the world championship of sword and sorcery, and the next thing our hero knows, he's his own avatar, for real. And he's being chased by wolves, and things get worse. Because, look, you may be good at pushing a mouse around and using the controls and winning a world championship at whatever age you are. It doesn't mean, I've never picked up a real sword in real life, have you?
It's been described as Lord of the Rings meets Ready Player 30. Is that anywhere close?
Ready Player 30? I thought there was only one of them. Oh, there is Ready Player 1.
Ready Player 1, excuse me.
That was a very, very good book. Kind of, in that it has its roots in the role-playing game world, which didn't exist 30 years ago. I couldn't have written this 30 years ago. Lord of the Rings is a fantasy world and a classic. And Discworld comes into that quote somewhere, in that it's, somewhere where anything can happen. But it's not really, that's the way you sort of tell people to get oriented to it, but it doesn't really resemble any of them, except that it's an adventure in a fantasy land with plenty of
What do you call the genre?
Well, funnily enough, there was a review that came in from a British science fiction magazine the other day in which the writer called it fantasy. He said, which is a word I rather like fantasy, but with a U. So a lot of fantasy is quite heavy-handed. In fact, when my agent was taking the books to market, she called me up laughing because she'd done the usual pitch to a publishing company and said, all the fun fantasy stuff comes out of England, like Douglas Adams, who's an old friend of mine. I worked with Douglas, knew him since university days, or Terry Pratchett. Fun stuff. And there was a silence at the other end of the line, and the person said, we take our fantasy very seriously. She called me up and I said, well, maybe we don't pitch it to that particular company.
And so how do you market this? Where do you go to festivals?
Yeah, you go to a lot of fantasy conventions. I was at one last week in Seattle. Next week is Baltimore. Next 2 weeks is Baltimore. And then WorldCon again is back in Seattle. That's the big one, where there are 10,000 people wandering around in bonkers costumes and having a great time.
Well, what kind of events do they have at these festivals?
Well, it's fandom. It's anyone who loves fantasy, science fiction, and everything related to it. A lot of people are writers. A lot of people are artists, musicians, just general fans like myself who want to go and, go to the panels. Sometimes I sit on the panels and
filmmakers go there as well?
Yeah,
Is it similar to or different from Comic-Con?
It's different in that Comic-Con, I think, is more... I haven't been to that one. I think that's more film and TV oriented, so that they have the casts of shows go to those. That's just the general world. And the fans are very devoted. They absolutely love that genre. So when they get a hold of your work and like it, it's night and day talking to people who've read the books and people who haven't. So I go back a year later, people by then have read the books, and then you're all sort of digging into the story together and saying, what about this? What about that?
Are you on the internet as well promoting?
Yeah, I have a website, which is called richardsparks.com, no E in Sparks. And there's stuff up there about the 4 books in the series, 2 of which have been published. The next one comes out on Halloween, I think we're having a party.
Did you set out to write a trilogy, or what do they call it, 4 books?
That would be a tetralogy. How's your Greek? Don't you remember? No, I set out to write a story. And the story, as Tolkien said in the preface to Lord of the Rings, he said the tale grew in the telling. and he ended up with 3 books. How it grew, interestingly enough, the first book flew out. It's 480 pages. It flew out in 2 months.
How many pages?
480 published pages. That took 2 months. And then I
2 months to write it?
Yeah, I know, it's extraordinary. I've never had a burst like that before. The second book took 5 months, the third book took a year, the fourth took a year
When
and a quarter.
when you wrote the first book, did you have the ending?
First thing you do. Absolutely. You have to know where it lands. Otherwise, you're just groping along the same pace as your audience. I had the idea, what would it be like to be this heroic young battle mage for real? It has to land, it has to be explained.
How much rewriting is involved?
Oh, a lot, always. Rewriting is where you get the gold. You know, as a lifelong script writer and script editor, you just learn to love the editing process. When you start out, it's a bit threatening. And if you've got half an hour, I can tell you the stories of what it's like to be edited for the first time. It's kind of invasive. But once you get the hang of it, we're all in this together, helping each other. And I have to have a brilliant editor at Kasich, my publisher. She was just staying here on the third book. But her notes are brilliant.
Well, how daunting is it to put out a book like this? I mean, isn't there a plethora that you're competing with?
Yeah, it is. It's not daunting in the least. The problem is that nowadays there are 5 to 7 million books published a year. There used to be about 500,000 in the English language. And the reason for this is self-publishing. And while there's nothing wrong with self-publishing, a lot of the books are not edited. So the writer would write it and put it out without going through the editing process, which is where you get all the help you
And
need.
AI books that are coming out now.
Well, I mean, that's a whole other thing.
I saw one individual who said, 7 books have come out about me, all AI.
That, I'm afraid, is possible. You know, I'm writing because I want to find out what happens next. If AI wants to write its own story, I mean, that's no interest to me.
Every author gets asked, so what's the procedure? You get up in the morning, you do it at night, do you do it throughout the day, do you work every day?
I write every day. I feel weird if I don't. When I'm really getting a head of steam up, I say, right, you've got to write 500 words a day. That's what Philip Pullman said. He's a very good,
How many do you write?
Well, it's at least 500. I mean, if you get
How many hours?
Well, I work at night. I usually cook dinner at night, and then my wife goes to bed early because she's a lark, and I'm a night owl. So then I open a couple of beers, sit down on the screen, and see what happens. And the thing is, you have to realize that, you write your 500 words, and if they're no good, you can always throw them away the next day. So there is a sort of get-out clause. You just sit down and write. But sometimes on the third book, which is the one that comes out later this year, I really had to go around the houses, a lot of rewriting. Must have thrown away 200 pages at least, as I was groping towards the...
Let's go to another quasi-series of books. You wrote some books about poker.
Yes. I suppose there is a connection in that poker's a game, but I always loved poker. I was taught by Mel Smith, who was an English comedian friend of mine, now sadly no longer with us. If you've seen The Princess Bride, you've presumably seen that. He plays the man with albinism in that. And Mel was very funny. His dad was a bookmaker in London, heroic gambler. And he taught me how to play poker when we were at university.
So what are
together.
your books? What's the theme of your books?
The poker books.
Poker books. What are they called?
Oh, the first one was called Diary of a Mad Poker Player, which not the best title, but it's all right. And that was about my adventures in the poker world, trying to be the next Chris Moneymaker, who won a satellite for $39. That got him into a $1,000 tournament, and then he won the World Series main event and won $6 million. I didn't, but at least I got to write a book that was fun. And then I wrote the sequel. I got coached by Tom McAvoy, who's a world champion. Yeah, won the World Series in the 80s. And he coached me. And then I won a tournament, satellite, to get into the main event, played in the 10,000.
You have to win a tournament to get into the bigger
I'm not going to
tournament?
put down $10,000 to play in a tournament. At least I wasn't in those days.
I'm not understanding what you're saying.
Well, you buy in a tournament for $1,000, and the top 10% win a $10,000 seat in the main event.
I see.
And I've done that 3 times. One year I lasted. I would have made the money if it was the modern structure, but in those days only the top 10% got paid, and I got the top 10.25%.
Tips for poker players. What do you say?
Don't do this at home. Well, actually, the tip is this. People are always asking me, especially in England, should I come out to Hollywood, try and be a writer? Should I try and be an actor? I said, absolutely, go for it, because you don't want to be regretting at the end of your life not trying it. Should I be a professional poker player? No, absolutely not. Why? Because you're making a living off other people. You're a parasite. Even though these people are brilliant and some of the funniest, most interesting people I've met are professional poker players. They're very bright. They really know what they're doing. But it's not a healthy way to make a living, especially for a kid. You know, if you win a $1 million tournament, $1 million prize money, well, there's taxes to be paid on that. And what happens is they go off and then lose the money in cash games. And at the end of the year, the tax knock on the door. Yeah, where's my $300,000?
Well, it doesn't all even out the wins and the losses.
You've got to keep your records. And if they come after you and say, look, you won this tournament for $1 million, you owe us 300,000 or whatever the figures might be, where is it? You have to come up with paperwork to show.
What is it? Why do you do this? What is yours? What's the kick?
For me, I'm a recreational player. I'm a for-profit recreational player, so I play to win. Last time I played, I got absolutely marmalised. Entirely my own fault, but you know, that happens.
So what is it? You learn techniques? I'm not a poker player, obviously.
Yeah, it's a game of skill. Eric Seidel, who's won, I think, 6 or 7 World Series titles, not the main event, but other ones, one of the best players in the world over the last 30 years, says poker is 100% skill and 100% luck. That's poker for you.
All right. I know you own a bar for gambling, where people gamble in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, well, look, you don't always make money writing. I was lucky enough to start off script writing, where you get well paid. But in book writing, I go to these conferences, and most of the writers have to have other jobs. They don't make a living off writing their books, which was news to me. So I was lucky to come in from the script world. What was the question?
You bought a bar.
Yeah, I bought a bar. Okay. So
what's that? What's the takeaway?
That's
Tell me
my
what
investment is, so that that makes a living.
The house always wins, right?
Yeah, of course. But I mean, we paid like 98% out, but we got 15 slots in the bar. It's a thing called a Nevada Tavern.
You're not on the strip. You're for the locals,
yeah,
right?
We're for the locals. We're an enterprise. We're called Sporting Life Bar. We've been Bar of the Year in Las Vegas several times since we opened it. Sports Bar of the Year. And it's great when you get one of the sports team fans, because we're the official bar of Ohio State University. So they all come along. There's 200 of them yelling their heads off. They're having a great time. We all have Super Bowl parties. It's my pride and joy. It's been great. We'll be out there next week.
You also wrote another book that's about a subject I'm very fond of, called Along the Cherry Lane. Tell me what that book is and who it's about.
Well, that's my father-in-law, Milt Oaken, now no longer with us, sadly. Milt was described in Time magazine as one of the 3 top producers of the 20th century. The others were Quincy Jones and Sir George Martin. Not the guy who wrote Game of Thrones, the other one. But they're both great heroes of mine, those 2. And Milt was the 3rd. And Milt produced things like a lot of folk music, and Peter, Paul and Mary, he put them together. Well, Albert Grossman put them together, Bob Dylan's manager, foisted them off on Milt. And Milt didn't want anything to do with them because they didn't fit. The voices didn't fit. They were very unmusical. And Milt created the sound for them, which they was doing until they stopped touring his arrangements. And then John Denver was John and he were devoted to each other. And John really looked up to Milt as a father figure. And Milt was the nicest man. He was honest in the film and the music business, which is not everybody. So all his stars and his writers loved him. Will.i.am of Black Eyed Peas had an office in his office in New York. Just have a room, look after yourself. That was the sort of thing he did. Lee Holdridge, the composer, was talking with Quincy Jones one day, and they were comparing royalties. And Quincy had one piece of paper saying X amount of money and no details. And Lee got his out, and there was stacks of it. Every song, every play, everything, every tiny bit of money from all over the world, which is what Cherry Lane Music did.
Well, as you know, I knew Milt, and I have been a lawyer in the music industry for 50 years. And I'm quoted in the book as saying he had more rectitude than anybody else probably I ever met in the music industry. Was a just a terribly nice and honorable and talented person overall.
Yeah, and he just loved it. His first love was opera.
Correct.
So he's on the board of the LA Opera. If it hadn't been for Milt, Placido Domingo would never have been our general manager, which was great because in this town, Placido can pick up the phone to anybody when he was here. You know, a big star in this town really helped.
And Milt was the band leader for Harry Belafonte.
He was the conductor for Harry Belafonte. Harry fired him twice.
And he also had been a school teacher in New York and
system.
wouldn't take the loyalty oaths that were required in the 50s and lost his job, right?
Not exactly. He got headhunted by Harold de Cormier, I think it was one of Harry Belafonte's other conductors. So come on in and help. And then the next thing he knew, he was on tour with Harry and he just couldn't keep the teaching up. But he loved teaching. And in the book, as many of his ex-pupils spoke about how much he meant to them as a teacher.
Tell me, how easy is it for you, and what's the secret to writing comedy? Because I know you've done a lot in that area.
What's the secret to it? Oh, look, I think I can sum it up in one word probably. If I was going to tell you the world's funniest joke now, with luck you'd laugh. And the crew would all laugh. And then if I tell you 5 minutes later the same joke, you might give them a polite sort of simper, but you think, why is he telling me that again? Comedy is laughter is a reaction to surprise. So comedy comes out of surprising things happening, which is why it works well in adventures. You know, people are charging around getting up to dangerous things and funny things happen along the way. They just can't help it. So it's like Hitchcock used to make you laugh and then scare you. And so that's the light and shade working together to make a much more three-dimensional story than if it's just straightforward adventure. You know, a lot of fantasy, which I love, can be very slightly po-faced. It can be like as if they're trying to tell you it's so serious that you have to believe it. But if you give them a laugh, you know, then they're just into it, and it's storytelling. And it's not piss-taking. I'm not doing a spoof.
Another genre you've been involved in is writing the libretto in operas. I know you did Hansel and Gretel, and there was the Chilean one.
Yeah, Dulce Rosa. That was from a book by Isabel Allende, who's a writer I admire very much. The LA Opera was looking for what's the word when you give someone a job? They were looking to hire Lee Holdridge to write an opera, and I'm his lyricist. So I set about looking for a story.
What's that like, writing for...
Well, you need to find a story.
And it's been produced at
it's
the Music Center.
In several places. Produced in LA, revived, produced in Uruguay. It was going to be done in Chile, I think. So I needed to find a story, and Isabel's one of my favorite writers, so I was lucky enough to find a brilliant short story, 12-page short story in her Contes de Eva Luna. And that story has one line of dialogue in it. And my opera is entirely dialogue, or sung dialogue. So, you know, you're turning one form into another. So I had to write every word of that story based on her narrative. Luckily, she loved the finished result, which is great because...
this is Isabel
Allende.
Who's a world-class...
Oh, yeah, she's sold 80 million books.
Right. So you got to know her.
Yeah. And when Lee and I went up to her, she lives in near San Francisco.
Right.
You know, Lee was getting a little bit nervous. I hope she likes it. I was completely confident. I said, she's going to love it. And luckily she did. But then when she came down to be interviewed for the radio here on stage, she was kind of beating up very funnily beating up the guy who was interviewing her, teasing him. He didn't quite know how to handle it. I realized that she's an absolute cannon. If she hadn't liked it, I'd have been in trouble.
All right, what's next? You've got your series of books, the New Rock series. What's
this
next?
Is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, as long as I can breathe, is keep writing New Rock stories. At the moment, I'm on to sequels. The tetralogy is complete. That's done. You know, so we're all, you know, there are like Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time. He died before finishing it. It's nice to get that complete so that when my time comes, at least that one's done. Any other things will be follow-on. So I'm doing some short stories around some of the lesser characters, and on to the next thing.
All right, everyone. The New Rock, New Roll, and subsequent series, the New Rock series, I commend you all. In fact, I insist that you all go out, buy out, and read it. If you don't, I'm not going to allow you to see the next episode of Tune In with Trevor. Well, Richard, it's really been a thrill to have you here, and someone so talented. And I want to thank everybody for watching Tune In with Trevor. I ask you to subscribe, and again, all the best from this part of the world.